Morning, everybody. Coming to you from Rough Run in Cranberry Wilderness, West Virginia. I'm on a little trail that's not on any of the maps. It comes off the north-south trail, headed south and downhill towards Public Road 76. And this morning we're going to talk about water resupply in places where there's not a lot of water. Earlier this year, I was up on the County Line Trail, which is also on high ground, and water is extremely scarce up there. I'd pitched camp and was almost out of water, and there was no running water, there was no standing water. I ended up finding a patch of wet mud and digging a series of wells and letting them fill up overnight, and then refilled out of those in the morning. And when I got back and posted some videos, a friend of mine, Steve, asked me on Facebook to talk a little more about how that works, or how I do it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And Steve, I'm just going to apologize up front. This is like my fourth time trying this video, and I cannot seem to get the camera to keep filming. Every time I put it down to show the actual process of the filtering, it keeps turning the video off. And obviously my filming skills need some practice, but even with my limitations in place, I can step you through, and you'll see pretty quickly how this works. So that being said, I'm going to flip the camera around here. So this is the water that I found last night. I'd been out of water for 3 hours. I was already starting to get dry throat, getting signs of dehydration. I was running out of daylight. And so when I found this water, such as it is, I knew this was where I had to stop for the evening. Now, this isn't very good water. It is technically running, but it's barely running, and I'm not even sure it would be here if it hadn't rained pretty heavily last week. This is still, where the ground's saturated, is still coming out of the ground, but this is not a very good water source. This is better than what I had on the County Line Trail. There was no water at all on the ground up there, but this ain't great. As you can see, it's not deep enough to collect with any water filtration or water container that I'm aware of. You can't fill this up. You can't fill a pop bottle or a canteen out of this. You definitely can't get water in a water bladder in this. You can't even use the pump water filters. All you'll do is suck sediment and mud. The water's not deep enough to even cover up the aperture of the pump. So what I did last night, before it got dark, was I found some places in this little, we'll call it a stream, this little creek. Well, it's Rough Run, so I guess technically it's a run. But I found some places where water was already naturally pooling to some extent, and I dug those out and made them deeper. Just dug these wells. Now, I picked the places where the water is already. Now, in the case of the County Line Trail, there was no running water. I just had to find places where I could tell water had been pooling when it had been running a little bit better. And you can see the basins, where these places were. In this case, the water is already running, so the pools were easy to identify. And I dig those places out because I don't like leaving traces. I'm a big proponent of the leave no trace principles. I left the trace in this case because I literally needed the water to survive. So if I have to leave a trace, I try to leave the least trace possible. And with that in mind, I find where the water pools. Now, if there's no running water at all, you want the place where the water pooled, because that's where there's likely water, most likely in the ground, because it's going to pool underneath there as well in the water, and it's going to naturally draw there if you dig it out. But we get a hard rainstorm flooding down through here. It'll round these walls out, and the pool will remain deeper than it was, but you won't be able to tell that it was human dug. It'll erase the trace. So with that being said, the other thing to note is I dug 3 of them. I'm not going to walk up the little creek, but there's 2 more further upstream. And I do that because, they settle and clear. They refill and settle and clear overnight. But as you're using these, it doesn't really take a whole lot to foul them up. If you can drop something in it, you can accidentally brush the sides of the well, even dipping the water out of them too fast, and they start refilling. They'll start pulling that fine sediment off the sides and muck up the water. And you don't really want that. I mean, the filters will filter it out. It's not the end of the world, but that fine sediment will degrade a water filter faster than anything else. If your filter has a ceramic element, you're not going to be in too bad a shape, more than likely. You can take it out, wash it off, scrub it off, get the sediment off of the surface, and you'll be fine. But if you don't have a ceramic element in your filter, which I do not right now, and it gets down in the fine mesh of those other types of filters, you might be able to blow water, blow back through it and wash it out a little bit. But even then, you're still just blowing the sediment into your water reservoir, where it's going to suck right back into the filter unless you can change it out. Anyway, the best thing is just not to have the sediment in there to begin with. So I got a little bit of a filtration system, a pre-filter, I guess you could say, to help get as much of that out. But as long as the water's clear, even better. Point being, if I get this thing muddied up in the mornings, I got to hit the trails as quickly as I can. Expediency is the order of the day in the mornings when I'm on the multi-day hike and recon trips. So I don't have time to wait for a mud hole to clear up again. That's why I dig 2 more. So if I muck this one up and it gets all muddied and fucked up, I can just go upstream and go to the next one. And it may be apparent in common sense, but you want to fill these, you want to go downstream and use them upstream as needed, because if you go upstream and screw up that one, the mud and sediment and stuff's just going to wash downstream into the next one. There's really not any point in having multiples if you do it that way. So start downstream. If you fuck it up, go to the next one upstream. So that being said, what we've got here equipment-wise is a Camelback 100-ounce bladder. I'm not going to get into the discussion as to why I use bladders rather than rigid containers. That's a whole other discussion for another day. And the unfiltered water goes straight into this. I don't pre-filter it, which again is a whole other conversation, pre versus post filtering. But my filter is this MSR inline filter. It plugs into the Camelback tube. That end right there plugs in right there, and I just filter as needed. The other things I have here, that's a Sea to Summit collapsible silicone cup. Let's see it. See if I can get it collapsed down here. It's being a bitch. Come on, you're embarrassing me in front of my friends. Don't make me put the phone down. There we go. So it collapses down. It's got graduations inside, so it's nice for measuring water for dehydrated meals and stuff in the evenings. It collapses down to almost nothing. It weighs less than an ounce. It's very light. But that's going to be the scoop. The other thing that's nice about this is I can rig this up with a paracord harness and lower it off of bridges or rocks and get into water that I can't physically get down to refill from. There's been lots of times there's been a pool that was deep enough I could have submerged the whole bladder, but it was physically impossible to get down there without killing myself. So I had to lower this like a bucket and scoop it. It's a pain in the ass because of course the cup wants to float. You got to flip it around and fuck with it to get it to draw water, but it's doable. The other thing, I got a collapsible funnel, which I'm not going to try to collapse down, but it goes down to a disc shaped thing, just like the cup does. And then that's just a reusable fine mesh coffee filter. And like I said, I would love to be able to get this camera to video this, but I'm having, like I said, it's the 4th, 5th time I've tried this, and every time I put the phone down, it stops recording. So I'm going to try again, but if the video stops, you already see how this goes. The filter goes into the funnel goes into the aperture of the Camelback. I scoop the water out of the well with the cup, dump it in the filter, and it filters through and goes into the Camelback. Now I don't really need the funnel for the Camelback because the aperture is so large. The funnel is primarily for containers that have smaller lids. So if I were to use a pop bottle or a canteen, the funnel becomes pretty important. And also the collapsible 4-liter bottles that I use, their apertures are bigger than a pop lid, but not by much. So the funnel really is kind of essential to get the water channeled down into those, so it's not just leaking out the filter. Because as you can see, in this case, I've got quite a bit of water. But like when I was on the county line trail, there was no water to spare. Every drop had to get into the container. So that the funnel comes in handy for that. So, all right, all that being said, that's how it works. And I'm going to put the phone down, and I'm going to try to film this. But if this video stops in about 4 seconds, you'll know that I fucked it up again. But hopefully this will show you how it goes. I guess it would help if I flipped it around. Obviously, my camera skill. Oh, here we go. Will this stay? Will it Oh, holy crap, it's still working. Okay, so like I said, it doesn't, now that I've already connected all the dots, you don't even really need to see this, but since it's actually working, let's see if we can get this rigged up here. Funnel in the thing. You want to get this piece right here on your thumb to hold that funnel to keep it from going down in the aperture. I've had to fish that out a couple of times. Now again, this is pre-filtered, so if it does get a little bit of water or a little bit of dirt and stuff, and it's not that big of a deal. We'll scoop very carefully. Try not to get too many ripples around the edges. Now, one of the things that's nice about this creek bed is it's kind of a hard mud, almost clay. It's not the real fine. I mean, there is sediment in it, but a lot of these walls are more clay and mud, like hard mud, than sand. So if I'm careful, I'm hoping I'll only need to use the one pool. And it just filters down in like so. Now today, I'm only filling up this one Camelback bladder. So this one well will probably be enough if I don't muddy it up. But if I were camping in place, or if I were going to remain on high ground where water was questionable, I would fill up at least one of the 4-quart, or 4 liter water bottles. And that's another reason